to my love zone. The night is ours if you just stay here. 'Cause you know that if you need it in the morning, come see me. In the afternoon, you better come see me. Even late at night, you better come see me. I can give you good loving, come see me. I can please you every hour, every moment, every day of the week. If
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Ben from Universal Audio, and welcome to Office Hours. It's a wonderful Monday morning here in California. Hope wherever you guys are, you're having a wonderful day as well. It's just after the weekend, so it's nice to come back after a week of work and then a nice little weekend making music, having fun inside of Luna. But what's great about this week is that we're going to preview 1.0.6, the next update for Luna that's about to come out. It's got a lot of great features, some fixes, and some stuff that I know you guys are going to be excited about. But before we dive in, if you guys are hopefully tuning in, checking out these countdowns, you're obviously noticing that we're using photos and music that are supplied by you guys. So if you want to participate, if you want to be a part of our countdowns, it's really easy. Tag your photos with hashtag Universal Audio on Instagram. That's where we like to find our photos. Notice how a lot of them were square. And then for the music, there's a secret email address that I'm only gonna tell you. I'm gonna whisper it right now. live@uaudio.com. If you hit us up at that email address with your music or music that you've been working on that you would like us to feature, send it to us. We'd love to feature it as well. But yeah, guys, welcome to Office Hours. And who do we got today? We got the guys. What up?
What's going on, everybody?
How's everybody doing? Morning, Ben.
Morning.
Hey, all.
Morning.
And strictly
Morning.
speaking, that was not a whisper. That was more like your DJ. That was like,
Yeah,
I know.
I was kind of gonna say, like, can you do the rest of the show in that voice? I feel like
Okay. Well, so we've got a 1.0.6 release coming imminently. No, it's
that's right.
It takes so much extra thought to try to hang down that voice. Well, guys, so yeah, we've got a software update that should be arriving. I believe it's this week, right, Connor?
Yes. So, yep. We'll have 1.0.6 available this week with some more incremental additions to Luna that we'll talk about today, as well as the continuous stream of bug fixes, heavily influenced by what we get through the feedback mechanism and what we know we need to add. So a couple few good things that we'll cover here today.
Nice.
And yeah, that should be landing in the next several days.
Hell yeah. Well, I remember you told me one stat, I think it was like last week or the week before, like the total number of bugs, fixes, or feature enhancements that have come as a result of feedback since 1.0. What's that number at roughly?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I did a analysis of all of that. It's in the thousands of like individual submissions that are counted up. So if we go through the feedback and someone says, I want A and B and C, that one report will count for like three unique requests, right? In the way that we categorize it. So when you count it up that way, then the things that we've addressed since 1.0 add up to thousands of individual requests from users so far, and it's just working out so nicely to have that built right into the app, and really appreciate everyone that smashes the feedback button. It's really wonderful for us to have that direct channel from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, you guys are so many good questions already coming in the chat. Look, I got a really easy one that will answer before we dive into our 106. Mr. Funk Monk is asking, he's got a live gig with Luna, but there's weak Wi-Fi for iLok. Is there a way to download that onto his computer?
There is a way to download it onto an iLok USB. So that will let you work offline completely, but it will not work on just the computer activation. iLok as a licensing platform has several mechanisms that are valid activation locations, as they're called.
Yeah.
For Luna, you need to use iLok Cloud or iLok USB. So you can go out and go on Amazon or Sweetwater and pick up iLok USB and activate Luna to that, and no internet is required at that point.
Yeah.
and that's just a drag and drop right from the ILM, the iLok License Manager. You drag and drop it onto your iLok. It'll download that second authorization onto the physical key. So then you can do both. You can have the cloud when you need it and the physical when you need it.
That's right. Yeah, you don't have to worry like, oh, is it on my iLok or not? It's just we give you enough activation so that you can have iLok USB and then also log into Luna anywhere you have reliable internet and just use it that way without the key if you like.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, let's. All right. I'm gonna share my screen here because I signed up for the coolest 1.0.6 feature. Something I've been personally waiting for since 1.0. Check this out, guys. So I can now make a clip. I can separate that clip by hitting B. If I right click on that clip, you're gonna notice something a little different here. What's that? Oh yeah. Reverse, baby.
Oh yeah.
And a shockingly popular request. Like, and this goes to show, you know, what Connor was talking about, all this feedback. That this would not have gotten in this early if it weren't for you guys asking about it. Like, I was surprised myself at it, but it's got so many cool features, as Ben's gonna show you.
Oh, totally. Yeah, so let's just, for fun here, I'm just gonna take this this little chord loop. I just reversed all 4 of those one by one, and again, to do this, all I'm doing is just separating and then coming up to the top of the clip and right-clicking on it and selecting reverse. I guess you can do that anywhere on the clip, anywhere that you can right-click. And you know, so you'll see there's a couple other options here like consolidate, you know, which is the same as the shortcut Option Shift 3. You know, so it allows you to glue a couple of clips together and make them one unit. Which, let's do that for this bit here. So now that I've got this reverse piano going on, let's see. There we go. So that is reverse. Oh yeah, lots of. Oh man, the chat right now. Everyone now, everything can go backwards. Yep, exactly. So yeah, so if you guys are probably familiar using reverse, you know, other workstations have this, so you know, it works as you would expect it to. Not really too much to get complicated with here. You know, there's, of course, you can come in and do the same sort of thing with smaller clips. You know, I think the big helpful tip to know is just, you know, when you have a thing that you want to reverse, just select it, hit the B key to separate that clip, and then right click, reverse. Pretty simple method there. But what I do want to show you guys, because I don't know about you guys, but I love me some reverse reverbs. Reverse reverb is always so much fun. Drum reverb. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this snare drum from this clip and copy it down here onto a track and be a good steward for myself later and give it a little bit of a fade out so I don't have any clicks or pops. Real simply, going to come in here, add, say, something like a pure plate. I don't know, that can do this all completely out of context, which is, of course, the way you're supposed to do audio. You're supposed to look at it, not listen to it. Everyone knows that. So what I can do now is I've got the snare drum. Let me slow it up. Sounds like a snare drum being thrown straight into a plate. So I can simply just, quickest way to do this is to just export. So I've got that track soloed. So if I hit Option Command B, it brings up my export window over here. And let's call it reverb snare for reverse. Remember, guys, naming your files is always a good idea. Naming your tracks is always a good idea. And now we take that resulting clip, drag it back into Luna. And as you saw, I just dragged it right over onto the track line, or over into the track area. You can also pull it over here on the left. Basically, anywhere that you drop an audio file, it'll create what you're intending it to here. So now you can see there's my reverb with all of its glorious tail. So what I can do now is I can hit reverse on that. Now we've got a nice little snare swell. And this is, so you know, you saw this is already kind of cut to the grid, but something, you know, some of you may not know about is, let's say I don't want that very, you know, that kind of soft attack to it. I don't want it to be a very sharp end to it. But now, how do I get this to line up to beat one? You know, it can move it, but it's snapping based on the front part of my clip. You know, so I could come in here and try to eyeball it. In fact, eyeballing it is how I did it for many, many years, until some kind person informed me that there's a keyboard shortcut for this. Of course there is, right? Put your playhead where you want the end of the clip to land, and if you hit Control, Command, click, it now puts that right edge of the clip right onto the downbeat. So now I've got a super precise swell, fade in. And just like that, we've got reverse reverb, ladies and gentlemen. I know, right? And it's perfectly placed. So yeah, guys, that's that's reverse. This is correct me if I'm wrong. This is probably the coolest feature in 1.0.6, right, Connor?
It really depends on who you are and what you do, but I would have to say yes. Reverse reverse audio is, it's one of those like instantly creative feeling things where you're just like kind of, especially like guitar or synth lead stuff too. You get that sort of like, oh wow, that's cool, and you can spread satanic messages to the youth as well if you're into that.
I was surprised at how popular this was as a request. I would have never thought that it would have been that used that often, but
yeah. So we have a whole, within this notion of like audio processing at the clip level, this is certainly the top one up there. There's all kinds of other things that, we can do in the future, but this one is so important and so fundamental for basic audio editing, and really, jumped right to the top of that sort of category of items that we were like, let's just throw it right in a context menu. We don't need to add a whole system of, processing that's all different in different contexts and has all kinds of options. Let's just put reverse right at the right click fingertip, so to speak. So you can just make a selection and in context, flip it around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And the creative uses for this are kind of limitless. So it'd be kind of fun to, if you guys are in the chat, if there's any uses that you guys have had for reverse that we haven't shown here yet, hit it in the comments. Let's see if you guys have got some other good examples that we can share with everybody that's following along here on the stream today. And I have been noticing there's a bunch of chatter about the Command H. So yeah, what's the deal with that, Connor?
Yeah, Command H is our keyboard shortcut for healing separations. So you can still minimize Luna by clicking on the minimize button in the top left corner, but there are a limited number of keys that we can use for feature useful commands. But that some applications have some default Mac OS standard key commands like Command H. We also, override and request you to sort of change some of your default key commands in other cases, like for Spotlight, for Record, just based on sort of a industry standard muscle memory, so to speak, where you're gonna be right in line with a lot of other workstation kind of familiarity by numbers. Anyway, if you are Pro Tools user, you'll be right at home with that. You may have keypad 3, other things like that. This is one that's along those lines. Is the heal separation command basically lets you take any previously separated clip that hasn't had any adjustments made to the relative position of the content. So in other words, it can stitch it back together. So if you've done any sort of separating for a particular purpose and don't need that separation anymore, then you can heal that with Command H. And that's the reason it's gone. We used it for a feature. And if you need to minimize Luna, you can, use the quickest way, if you're truly looking for a keyboard path, is something that I always have to force myself to remember and often have, been incorporating more and more in all applications, not just Luna, is Shift Command / brings up the help menu search. And then if you, so that's like the Shift Command ? And then if you just type hide and then down arrow and enter, that's a little involved for
1,
hiding
2,
Luna.
3, 4, yeah, huh?
no, we last week, because we went over this last week, and it was the one of the quick ways is that Command Tab, which is the application switcher of Mac OS,
totally.
That'll respect the Command H once it's highlighted. So
yeah, and you can even, like, what I'll do a lot of times.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even know that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can pull up.
Loved it either.
You can pull up Command Tab, and then once you're in Command Tab, you can tab through things, but you can also use your mouse. And then what Drew's saying here is any application you have open, if you're selected on it, and then you press, hold Command H or even Command Q, a lot of those application level shortcuts get passed to whatever application is currently selected. So that's definitely a nice little time saver right there.
Ignore my suggestion. Jeez.
Well, I mean, as a Pro Tools user for many decades, it's that was like I'm used to that. That's natural to me. So
yeah, totally. All right, a lot of questions coming in asking if Nudge has made it into 1.0.6.
Nudge has not made it into 1.0.6, and maybe it might be a good preview step to say like everything that is in 1.0.6 and kind of restate the types of features that we're getting into these incremental releases. And if you've been following along with us since 1.0, you know that these releases are coming about every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And that time frame has a lot of advantages, but also makes it really focused on easy isn't always necessarily the right word, but sort of short scale features where you're like, okay, we can, work on something for 2 weeks. If it's at a level of quality that we can turn it on and put it out there, we're going to do that. And then there's also longer term features. So Nudge is one of those things that is highly requested, certainly on our list of things to do. It's not in 106. And for a sort of fully featured Nudge, it's not the kind of thing that we want to just do in like a 2 week time period and say, like, let's just kick it out there with, just like, for instance, the way we nudged right now with MIDI notes is just by grid, which is fine. But for Nudge to really be fully useful in a pro audio editing context, you need to be able to go in at the millisecond or sometimes even the sample level. So those are the kind of things that we're like, okay, we can't just toss out a clip nudge feature that only lets you nudge by grid. We need to do the whole deal there so that you can truly nudge in a pro audio editing manner. So that is not in 106. And just to sort of cover what 106 includes, and we'll get right on to the next one here, I think, is reverse audio, as you saw. A major sort of lack from 1.0 until now is the ability to drag MIDI clips from Finder, or most importantly, from a virtual instrument that has MIDI clip capabilities in it, to drag that directly to an existing track on the timeline. Nice. That's a huge addition to 1.0.6. Something that, every time we did MIDI editing workflows on office hours, or really in any sort of public area, like, oh, why can't I, drag it to a specific track? Why do I have to create a new track every time? No longer the case. We'll look at that.
Yeah.
Nice.
You can now automate the extensions that are built into the Luna mixer. So you can record and edit automation for the tape machines. So saturation on Oxide and all the controls on the Studer, as well as the Neve summing controls. So those are automatable now. And you can also clear all automation on selected tracks. We'll look at all this stuff later, as well as a quick little one to clear the recent list. So in the file menu and in the create page, when you have your recent list, you can just, right click and clear that all out of there and a number of smaller improvements and bug fixes. We'll get into all that. So just so everyone knows what 106 includes up front, that's the list. Nice. And we'll look at some more items now.
I love it. Love how we reversed our way into telling everybody what it actually includes, because I was so excited just to start reversing things. We're like, get into it. Nice. Well, so let's break that down then. So MIDI clip, drag and drop. Let's show, because this is something. So now MIDI clips respond similar to how audio clips do, where you can drag and drop them into the tracks list, into the timeline, drag them anywhere, and now they show up as individual tracks. Correct?
Yeah, right. So what we have here, I have a simple little demo set up here with, and we're going to show how you can drag them from. Let's start with a plugin. So in this particular case, I have Superior Drummer 3 loaded up. Since the last stream, I've upgraded to Superior Drummer 3. So I don't want to look like too old school. But anyway, so we have and Superior Drummer 3 has the ability to follow the host or not follow the host. So that will, follow tempo changes there. It also has the ability, for those of you that are familiar with it, to be able to build songs and build structures inside of here. So when it comes to this, when I go to the Grooves tab, I can either I can build it inside of the plugin if I want, and build and have that structure be maintained. Or I could simply drag that straight to the track. So let's look at that, because I actually think, Connor and the guys did some clever stuff here visually, where if you grab a clip here, if I drag that out of the plugin, you'll notice that we get this gold box letting you know where it's going to land. And, it'll go to the nearest track, and I can move that up and down here. But if I move to the left a little bit more, the gold box turns into a line, and then that line lets me drop it where I want. So this will do a new track in between those two tracks. And then, of course, I get a dialog box asking me, because I have a tempo map in this song. And if I didn't have a tempo map in this song, I would overwrite that if I were to just drag that in and drop it in. So I'm going to keep my current tempo map, and it goes in like that. I can also grab both of these and bring them in that same way, and you can see how it kind of it's going to the grid and allowing me to place it very precisely right on top of that. and of course I don't want to blow out that tempo map. So really simple, drag and drop there. We also have, again, making a new track. We also have the ability to do this from the Finder. So let's say if I just want to Command Tab, where's my Finder? There we go. Command Tab over to the
face.
if I want to Command Tab over here, I can grab a MIDI file from the Finder and just pull it into Luna, and I get the same exact behavior where I can put it on a track directly or onto a new track. So super simple, like you'd expect, the option to either do a new track or to just place it wherever you want, either from the Finder or from a plugin window. So I don't know if there's anything more to that, Connor, than that. Is that?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing is that if you have a selection of audio and MIDI from the Finder, that all comes in the order of selection. Not a major highlight, but
cool.
It just is the case that you can import both of those file types simultaneously in a single drag and drop.
Awesome.
So not always the case in all other environments. So it's kind of nice, but it's I guess the only other little missing bit. You covered it all.
But
Cool. Awesome.
So if you just to make it super clear, so if you have a multi-track MIDI file and you drag and drop that, you get the multiple tracks all displayed out, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, good point. Yeah, so there's the two types of MIDI files, and the kind of like the one track. There's like type 0 and type 1. I think in the
Right.
true absolute geekiness that is MIDI.
Mm-hmm.
Type 0 is I think just the single track. Type 1's multi-track file. I might have that backwards. I don't remember, but we support both. And so if you have a single MIDI file that has multiple tracks in it and you drag it over the top of the timeline view, you'll see all of the necessary lanes appear. And if you have enough MIDI tracks, it'll put them onto those MIDI tracks.
Nice.
And I guess the opposite of that is in Luna is the export function, where if you wanted to export a single track, you would use export clips. And if you wanted to export a multi-track file, you would use the macro of export multi-track file, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you want to create a single track export, the best way to do that is to select all of your MIDI clips, consolidate it on all of your MIDI clips on that individual track,
Right.
consolidate it, right click, export clips, or Shift Command K, and get into the export clips browser and export that to destination that you'd like. And then if you want a multi-track file, you use the export multi-track MIDI option and file export. And that actually will, there's actually a third way really, but that'll do everything. And then if you use the export mixdown feature, the all track, basically every track that is an instrument track that you select in that browser, if you also choose the option to create a multi-track MIDI file, it will mirror your exact selection. So you can make a multi-track MIDI file of just particular tracks using export mixdown.
Oh, that's nice.
as well.
Yeah, cool.
Got a good question here from one of our favorite viewers, Danielle, asking what happened to unlimited undo and revert. Most of my sessions can only go back about 30 or 40 minutes in revert. That's bit her in the butt a few times. So yeah, how's revert and undo? Are there any things that people should know about the limitations of those two?
Yeah, I think the terminology unlimited undo is sort of true in the sense that with the combination of the persistent undo queue and auto backups, you can go back to essentially the beginning of your session, and it will become even more complete in the sense of being able to go back at any amount of time when a more fully fledged session versions feature is available.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of stuff that in that bucket of stuff that we can't release in a 2-week period or a 1-month period that we've got to kind of interleave with all of these really like urgent and really actionable kind of items that fall into the kinds of things that we've been doing since 1.0, as you've been seeing every 2 to 3 weeks. Versions within a single session file is something that will make this even more sort of this like unlimited quote unquote sense, where within a single document, the current queue size is 64. Mm-hmm. But because of the fact that queue is persistent and you have auto backups, you can kind of go through and sort of get back to a period of time. So the terminology there is better framed as like a persistent undo queue. So yeah. It's best to think about it as the fact that given the capabilities of the Luna session package, you can use auto backups and the fact that the undo queue is stored there to get back to pretty much any moment in time that you need to.
Mm-hmm. And the revert menu, the users can define how often that happens, right?
Yeah. So by default, a auto backup is created every 5 minutes. You can change that. And auto backups over a period of time get thinned out. So instead of just having the most recent 10 or some such algorithm for what gets kept, we actually keep a number based on like the past 24 hours. So like everything in the past 24 hours gets kept, but then you go like one per day at that point in time and things like that. And again, this is the kind of stuff that in a fully fleshed out versioning sort of feature, you'll have more access to.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. So let's keep on rolling on some of these new features, and especially there's a lot of stuff around automation that has gotten updated in 1.0.6. You want to walk people through what we've done there?
Sure. Yeah. So as you all know, we have built-in Neve summing and multi-track tape machine capabilities inside of Luna. And I'm just going to throw on some Neve summing and tape and start by showing the fact that these controls are now automatable. So you can see here in this instrument track that I'll rename to, as per Ben's fantastic advice earlier about naming everything, to Minimoog. And you can see here now that the tape controls for the Studer A800 are available in the automation track view area. So we've got all the controls that appear at the channel level. So because this is track level automation, you can automate these track level controls, right? Of course, I can go into the Studer tape machine, and in our tape machine concept here, this is the setting used for the global tape machine. This is not automatable because it doesn't really actually tie into a specific track. What is automatable are the controls on the track level. So you've got the high frequency record EQ, bias, repro high frequency and low frequency EQs, and of course, saturation. Nice. Similarly for Neve summing, if I switch over to the main track, you'll notice the focus browser automatically follows. One of the great features and attributes of the focus browser is that you can be thinking like, hey, I'm going to work on automation, and just change your track selection and have the focus browser follow you around in that context, if that's what you're doing. So here you can see that console appears as a category for automation items, and you can see all of the controls of the Neve summing algorithm there. So one use that I love for this is, and have been missing up until now, is the ability to use saturation to sort of add some kind of movement to something like a Minimoog ARP line. So let me actually mute this clip here because I'm getting everything through the cues. Oh, this is let me, I have no idea what's going on to some extent here. So I'm going to bypass this because I can hear something different. Okay, so hopefully you can all hear this Minimoog line.
Yep.
And what I'm going to do is switch over to this automation view for saturation. And I just want to, let me just delete this track entirely. I just want to add some movement to this. So I'm just going to draw some saturation. Actually, let me take this up to like about here. And kind of actually, I'm just going to pencil over this. So I'm going to start from like about 0 and kind of go up. And then I'm just going to duplicate this out. So I just really quickly made it essentially like, as if I were like being able to patch something in like some kind of oscillator or something like that to the saturation control. And it's subtle, but noticeable, and a really great way to get some additional, movement on something like an arpeggiator line from the Minimoog. Bias is another super fun control to automate. The EQs are like, just to step back for a second and think about how powerful it is to have these controls at every track level, and how, many of you who've been using Luna are noticing that if you put Neve summing and tape on everything, your time to quality is just so much lower. You're just like, oh, this sounds good. And you don't necessarily have to do any other plug-in processing to get a little bit of sweetening EQ in here. You can just adjust the high frequency and low frequency EQ in here. So those aren't necessarily something that I would reach for automation right off the bat, but certainly now you can do that. You can go in and say, oh, I've got a section that needs a little bit more high frequency, and I'm not going to throw in a whole new plugin to do that. I'm just going to bump it up a little bit in the Studer 800 track controls. So let's just go into bias here, and I'll write some automation on this one because this one is actually pretty sensitive. And of course, you can get into a position where, and actually I'll leave this in read for now and just kind of. So of course, if I that's not necessarily what I want because it's killing the volume so much. But what I can do is just ride this a little bit, like. So it's basically adding like a filter section on top of it.
Yeah.
And Connor, to be clear, some users might have already noticed that this was kind of a little Easter egg prior to 106, where you could do this, but only in the real-time modes of touch and latch, and you had no graphical representation, right?
Yeah, Easter egg. Yeah, that's totally what it was. We left that in there on purpose. Yep. So now you have full access to the desired automation controls here for Studer 800 on the track level, and of course the new summing. My favorite thing that I've done with this, and I guess is actually kind of go in and for. Like it might not make sense in this context, and I could pull up a drum track, but I don't want to belabor the point. Is actually like switch in and out of low and high impedance and do a volume trim automation at the same time, just to like add punch to a particular section. So
I can imagine that. Like, imagine a song.
Yeah.
If you got a song that breaks down to just guitar, you might want to switch to that low grunty one for that guitar break and then switch back,
Yeah, exactly. So here I've just switched into low impedance in this section. We'll just do it because it's going to, show you something here, and maybe it'll be audible. It's just a single track. And then, I'll go check out the trim. And let's set this at, default here. So that should be default. And for those sections that I automated that, I'm just going to bring that down. Let's see, this is about 1.7. Let's do about 3 on here. That's good enough. And then I'll copy and paste this over to this section. And then hopefully, so this, match those together. Subtle stuff. I mean, the low impedance isn't necessarily all that subtle. If you're really listening, it's like, I just love the low impedance setting on the summing. It's every time I try, I'm like, I gotta try not to use this because I feel like it's just such a cheat code.
Yeah, it is.
But man, this is particularly effective, and at a global level on the, like you pointed out, Drew, for different sections of the song, just really adding so quickly and easily with the ability to automate now in Luna, just this extra character to a particular section. And just even basic movement to something like a synth line that's repeating over and over again, where you want to, you could certainly automate controls inside of the Minimoog as well. And that's going to be a great place to, and of course those are capabilities that have already been possible in Luna. You can, come in here, show all of the controls for Minimoog and automate them. But the quality and character of these tape algorithms and the saturation on those are things that you're not going to quite get from a particular VI in all cases, and to have that just built into the track level as these extra sweeteners to add movement with are just fantastic.
Absolutely.
This leads into a really nice use case example of like, hey, what if I just recorded all this automation that I don't want anymore? We now have the ability under the edit menu to clear all of the automation. So if we recall, when I automated this, I automated trim and impedance, and I automated the saturation control on Minimoog. So it doesn't really matter what view I'm in here. I just switch back to Clips view. If I go to edit and click clear all automation, it just sets everything back to default. So the saturation control on the Minimoog channel is back to default, and all of the impedance and trim automation on the main bus channel are back to default as well. Not a whole lot more to show about that feature, but it's super useful in the case of, I just automated a bunch of parameters, or maybe I did that several, workflow steps ago, but I just want to get rid of all that automation. Make a selection, clear all automation. So if you wanted to do that for a particular section, like this is just the basic example, imagine there's multiple playlists of automation. I can do clear all automation just in this selected range. Or if you have an entire track's worth of automation that you want to do, this is of course a very small example, but imagine you're in a full session. You can click in the all tracks ruler and hit Command A. That will select everything in your entire session, and you can hit Edit, clear all automation. If you really want to just completely null out all of the automation in a document that you are working in, or you might get from someone else, and you want to review all the automation. That would be the way to do that.
And even when you're doing like the the template workaround where you're bringing stuff into a master session, you might want to pull out your automation on a copied session from the as you start on a new song. A lot of the stuff like Fab has been showing us on Tales from the Switch, that kind of workflow, right?
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, exactly.
And so if you you don't want to
yeah.
you don't want to clear out everything, but you just want to delete specific parts of automation, you can still, you've been able to do this forever, but you can go in and select specific things. So, select that automation, hit delete, and just clear out either specific automation or just one lane of automation. So say exactly, if you had the saturation automated and also the bias, but you wanted to keep one or the other, you can just go in and delete one of those pieces of automation, and it won't affect the others.
Exactly. Yep. Existing automation editing features in Luna have allowed that whatever automation view you are currently in, if you make a range selection in that automation view and hit delete, it will clear that automation. There's also kind of like there's two behaviors here if you want to get kind of tweaky for a second. So
never.
Yeah. Here's the two ways that this can work. So I've got this line right here, and say I want to keep the line and I just want to flatten it out. If I hit delete, it's going to clear all the breakpoints in that range. If I hit command, say, what I really want here is a flat line. When I hit delete, I can hit command X and it cuts those. So it's kind of like the thought process there is that there could be two things that you want to do. Mm-hmm. You might want to delete that in a sense of like, I just want to zero this out. Command X is your command for that. So that's cut. If you just want to sort of thin the automation, so to speak, like you're like, hey, I made this like move like this. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want all this extra movement in here. I just want a straight line. Mm-hmm. You can range select that and hit delete to create that ramp there instead of having all the little breakpoints. So,
dude, I think that's the Easter egg for the week right there of like that. Yeah,
that one is a deliberate. We did that on purpose. That's great.
Yeah, that's good to know because there's occasions when you want to, just hold my volume here. Like especially if you're writing automation, right? You can, say you're converting from like doing a fader ride to now wanting to be a little bit more precise or to kind of knock out oh man, I accidentally bumped a little bit here where I don't want to. You can go in and if either one of those will kind of work if you were doing a bump or if you want to slowly grow from your pre-chorus to your chorus, then you'd use delete to get that straight line as opposed to command X, which is cut. That will just flatten that automation out.
Well, and Connor, isn't it also a difference there is cut will put it into your clipboard and whereas delete doesn't?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Cut is going to also do the normal cut feature of, taking those breakpoints and keeping them in the clipboard. So if I hit Command V, you'll see that it appears over here.
Right. Okay, cool. That's what I thought.
Awesome. And so you mentioned also that there's clearing the recent list.
Yes. So let's go take a look at that. I'll head back to the create page here and you can see all of my previous attempts to preview 1.0.6. This is what I do when I wake up in the morning. I'm like, how am I going to? This is
a deceptive.
Show the people Luna.
This is a deceptive little feature because for me, like when I'm working on album projects, like my recent list gets filled up with like 10, 12 songs on an album, right? And then when I switch to another album, I want that blown out so that I can then repopulate it with the 10, 12 songs of the next album that I'm working on. So if you're working on different groups of songs, this is a deceptively useful little feature.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, this list can pile up certainly in the test scenarios that I'm most often using Luna in. I have like 800 untitled sessions in my Luna sessions folder.
We've seen them
every
before.
time. Yeah. You may have seen them on previous Luna office hours. It's just, part of the day's job there to make 500 Luna sessions. So no longer will I have to go and delete that using, the workspace files and all that stuff. I can just right click here and choose clear recent. The other place that you can access this where some amount of recent sessions appear, I think we cap this off at 5 or 10. There's a clear recent list here as well. And this is the same list. So you get this list cleared and this list cleared. So
I didn't know about the right click. Where's the right click again, Connor?
So let me make a new session and then open, here, let me just make a couple sessions. Yeah. So right now I'm up to 298 untitled Luna sessions. So there's no rhyme or reason as to when I reset. I think it's just like, this is a newer system. I think on my last system, it was like well over 1,000.
I was like, I remember seeing ones in the thousands on your rig before.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. So you just right click here and choose clear recent. Now this
Okay,
doesn't
so on
do
any one
like,
of those titles.
yeah,
okay.
on any of the individual titles in the recent list. It doesn't clear the individual item, it just clears the whole list. So
Okay, gotcha.
that's the little note there.
It's also really
And-
helpful, really helpful for any artists that are, if you're in a group and you're trying to work on your solo project in secret, you're going to want to know how to clear out
Hide the evidence.
Exactly.
This is totally a band mental health saver right here. So
Yeah.
what else are you working on? Yeah, totally. What are you doing?
going
Unfortunately,
solo-
we're
you
not
going
all
solo, bro?
sitting around each other's computers right now. So
I know, right?
yeah,
Nice.
And then
cool.
was it?
Yeah, that's the.
oh, yeah,
what's
we
up, Drew? Yeah, go
well,
ahead.
we were going to see if there's anybody from, was it Germany or Austria, or anyone that has a German or Austrian keyboard. They're going to be really happy. So if you have one of those keyboards, type us a sweet little message because there's a 1.0.6 specific fix for you guys.
Yeah, so that fix is that command equals, which is one of the four most used keyboard shortcuts if you're working in a single window to switch between the timeline and the mixer view. The keyboard position for that key on German and Austrian keyboards is under, and it's in a different location than on other keyboards. And this is the case with many non-English keyboards, of course, that there are particular keys that are all over the keyboard mapped in different locations. And the intent with these is that these fixes and sort of incremental changes as we go along is that we get the feedback that, hey, this key works over here, but it really should be in this position because that's where it is on the keyboard, or this is where it should be for sort of muscle memory familiarity. Like there's some cases where even a key isn't on, doesn't have a mapping on a different keyboard based on the locale. So this is a case of solving one of those such problems. We did a bunch of fixes to add in support for all of the different keyboard layouts and the ability to make those changes as we get feedback on stuff that is or isn't working in a particular locale. So one such example of that was that the command equals fixes that we had done previously were not actually working correctly on German and Austrian keyboards, and they are now in 106. Other tidbits to just mention really quickly, we've added copy and paste of compatible automation types. So previously, if you had automated a send and had another, did I put that on main? That's an interesting idea. And then also do this here really quick. And I'll try not to demo all of these because it'll get lost in this world here. So if I go, this is wild. So if I go and automate these send automation here, I can copy and paste this to the volume automation for a different send. That wasn't previously possible. So anything that kind of has matching. So it's just like basic cleanup kind of stuff like there. Done some improvement on MIDI loop recording performance. The summary there is that we create the clip before looping begins, which cleans up a lot of edge case and bug issues.
Nice.
And a whole host of other issues. Anyone that's had trouble hiding tracks while using the spill feature, that bug is fixed. Anyone, for the most part, we believe we finally fixed issues with login not working while visiting the create page. There's been a number of problems we've had to suss out there, and we think we've got the last one. And you'll see the release notes when this comes out in the next couple of days. The vast majority of the fixes we focused on, once again, come in from the feedback form, come in through folks contacting customer service and us getting direct interaction with folks based on the issues that they're having once they reach out to customer service. We get in there, we fix them, and prioritize those issues really above all other bugs that we're facing, unless they're ones to make new features work as we need them to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. What got a question coming in from Facebook here asking if there's been any fixes to the render spikes.
We are looking into all of that stuff, and our current sort of assessment of some of these conditions is that there's either peripherals like different displays we've seen, or individual plugins in a lot of cases that are causing issues, and we have to look at the real specific components of a system when that occurs, because there are just cases where CPU usage is maxed out because of the amount of native plugins that you're running in conjunction with other things going on the system. And in some cases, even with very high load on your U82 processing, and the integration of Luna with that, and a bunch of native plugins. We're looking at all of these cases. So specifically, the answer is no. There aren't any known fixes for CPU spikes in 106, but we are thoroughly investigating all of the reports that we get of that where we have actionable information. So what that means is like a system report. And in many cases, we've seen that like certain kinds of external displays are causing problems, which doesn't necessarily mean the display is something that can't be used. It means we have more work to do to improve performance there. In some cases, it's like external graphics cards, and we have, a bunch of graphics optimizations that we're working on. And some of those can be seen in 106, but it might not make a difference in the CPU render spikes. But I guess what I would just say to summarize and wrap that up is that if you are seeing CPU render spikes, it's important to use the feedback button and try to give us really specific system details and reach out to customer service. If you're in a situation where you're, sitting at like 30% on the render meter and then it goes up to like 400, 500% or something, we need to understand what's going on there. And it's oftentimes not the kind of thing that we can immediately determine just from a feedback item where it says, hey, I'm getting render spikes. And even if there's really good information, we might need you to reach out to customer service as well to really get a beat on exactly what's going on there. So it's definitely something we're taking really seriously. We're aware of those folks reporting that's affecting them, and we're really actively looking into that stuff.
Nice. And I know there's been some stuff with like me personally, like if I've tried to work on a session that's in Dropbox, sometimes Dropbox trying to sync the session while I'm also still in Luna working on it seems to cause some weird issues. And Fab had that same trouble on one of our shows a couple weeks ago. So yeah, it's similar advice, right? That any workstation has always had of like, maybe don't have 1,000 Chrome tabs open, or, pause Dropbox for a while, or make sure Time Machine is paused. Like, there's these things that your computer's always kind of doing in the background that it's helpful to press pause on those, or quit out of anything that's unnecessary. Because even though they may look like they're not, impeding on your CPU usage, they can still cause, weird stuff, especially if. I've noticed this a lot. Like if I have Chrome open with, with tabs with audio, like say YouTube or something like that, sometimes having Chrome trying to output audio and Luna all happening at the same time can make things unhappy.
Yeah, and it's definitely the kind of thing that we want to look into if there's a repeatable, persistent issue. And just I guess the last thing I'd add there is if you are getting render meter spikes, even if it's not something you encounter in another environment, another workstation, try just removing various peripherals and try to like bring the system to a state where it's just what's needed to run Luna, and see if you're having an issue still, and then sort of it's definitely like a somewhat painful troubleshooting process. But if you're able to and willing to help us with that information, like in a feedback submission, like, hey, I was getting render spikes and then I just brought the system back down to just like Thunderbolt and like any basic peripherals, like MIDI peripherals, other audio peripherals in a basic sense, like maybe try to remove external displays. We're seeing a lot of stuff there, and things change. That's really important information. And then you can add peripherals back one at a time and say, oh, once I added this, the spikes came back. And that is something that is not necessarily a problem in one place or another. It's an interaction, and we have to investigate that interaction. And oftentimes that might be something we can learn, like, yeah, we could probably improve here, and we'll make an effort to do that. In other cases, it might be like, man, that's something that we don't necessarily have a solution to right now, but we need more and more of that information. So that's kind of how you guys can, or y'all out there can help us with this particular problem.
Man, that's such good info. And like, I can just speak from experience here. It was probably like almost 10 years ago. I had a USB hub that was for making Pro Tools not happy. Like a Pro Tools HD system, like a system you think like, why does USB matter at all to that? It would end up being a buggy USB hub that was doing something. It was, either sending in corrupt information or too much, like we don't know what it was. The minute we pulled the hub out and just plugged straight into the computer, all the problems were solved. And you're like, it doesn't seem like those two should interact together, but it always does, right?
Yeah, and then there's this, just as another example of how complicated all this can be. Some of these, what we know about the MacBook Pros with the left side versus the right side charging, it's just like there's, that is a whole variable that's crazy and out of our control, where it's like your fan speed might be through the roof if you're charging on the left side versus the right side. So many variables.
What is the recommended charging side? Is it left side for charging, right side for Thunderbolt, or I can't remember.
I've got to say this right. Let's see.
Right side for power is what is recommended.
Right side. Okay, thank you, Matt. Yeah, I was kind of like, if I say this wrong, I'm going to regret it. So
Yeah.
just pulling up Google real quick.
Right. Nice. Well, man. So, guys, just to reiterate, 1.0.6, it's arriving this week. It's got reverse. It's got MIDI drag and drop. It's got a ton of new automation features and stability improvements, bug fixes all around. And so, yeah, the biggest question is, when's it arriving? Coming no later than very soon, definitely this week.
No later than very soon. Definitely this week is something we can bank on. We always make sure that if we find something that's going to take a step backwards, we fix it. So there, you can't always say exactly what day, but we're in the ballpark of, this definitely this week. So yeah,
Nice.
There we go.
Awesome. Well, and it was so cool. So, Connor, you helped us perfectly segue into the second segment we kind of had prepared to let people know a little bit about today, which is some basic like Luna and UAD troubleshooting, which is which we kind of just dipped our toe in there right then. But Matt, I know you've got a lot of really good advice for kind of basic troubleshooting steps that people should follow to be able to figure out like what actually is causing the issue. You mind kind of sharing some advice around troubleshooting as well?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, all the stuff that Connor just mentioned about Luna specific issues, that's all great. If you're getting error messages, make sure you're taking note of what error message you see, submit it as feedback. Anytime something goes wrong in Luna, submit feedback, let us know what's going on. That's great for us so we can constantly be improving. But there's a lot of other issues that can happen, and especially when you're using Apollo interface, you're using the UAD software, you're also using Luna, it's not quite clear where to start troubleshooting. So yeah, hopefully this will address some of that. But just to start, when you're troubleshooting any kind of issue, whether it be Apollo or anything, any kind of issue on your computer, the first thing to do is a cold reboot. So what that means is don't go into the power menu on your Mac and do restart. Actually fully shut down, turn off your Apollo, give it a second, and then boot everything back up. And what that does, what fully shutting down does versus just restarting, is it clears out the RAM, clears out the CPU cache. You're starting from a fresh slate instead of whatever problematic state you may have been in before. So yeah, that's definitely the first step. Always do a cold reboot of
step
all
one.
your interfaces. And your
Solves probably 90% of the little crazy stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, and
on a,
it's just
ahead,
every little issue, right? I mean, even at the NAMM show this year, like we were restarting the machine in between every single session that we had up on stage, just to make sure, like, no matter what, no gremlins, no bugs could be carried from one thing to another. So yeah, that cold reboot is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And just back to what I was saying before about submitting feedback in Luna. If you do see an error message and you don't necessarily catch it right away, you can actually go back and find error messages that were shown before by going to the view menu in the top menu bar and selecting notifications. That'll bring up the panel on the right side where it shows all Luna messages that have been shown to you.
Nice.
So yeah, again, just submit feedback, let us know what the error message says, and that's super helpful for us. So yeah, there's couple other troubleshooting things that can be really helpful. If you're having any kind of hardware issues, which since the Apollo is so tightly integrated with Luna, it can be kind of hard to discern what's a hardware issue versus what's a software issue. But if you're getting any kind of like distortion on your inputs or maybe clicks and pops or something like that, a hardware reset on your Apollo is a really good idea. If you go to, let me share my screen with you real quick. If you go to help.uaudio.com, that's our knowledge base. So yeah, if you say you're on like an Apollo X6, for example, and you're having some kind of, input issue or just the hardware is acting wonky, to find a hardware reset procedure for an X6, best way is go to help.uaudio.com, type in the model of your Apollo, so Apollo X6, then hardware reset, and that should bring it right up. Yeah, first thing that comes up, Apollo X6, hardware reset.
And so a hardware reset, what exactly does that do, and when would you need to go all the way to a hardware reset?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, anytime you're having any kind of input issues like distortion or clicks and pops or any kind of audio issues on input, hardware reset's a really good idea. I mean, same thing with audio issues on output. Basically, anytime that the Apollo is passing signal to the computer or vice versa, and something's not going right, a hardware reset's a good idea.
Nice.
So it's a quick 5-step process. It's just a matter of shutting down the Apollo, holding down a couple buttons, and flipping it back on. You see out in the article here, it's pretty straightforward. So it's a little bit different on a Twin, a little bit different on an Aero, but yeah, again, if you just search your Apollo model followed by hardware reset at our knowledge base, you'll find the directions.
Help.uaudio.com. Always there to help.
Yep. 24/7. Yep.
Nice.
So yeah, aside from the hardware reset, then you get kind of into just general troubleshooting where anytime you're getting kind of UAD errors, like an error 38, error 51, something like that, disabled plugins when you have plenty of DSP available. Then you get into this next class of troubleshooting, which would be the first thing would be like uninstall and reinstall the UAD software. That's kind of a catch-all fix for a lot of different types of issues. And when you're doing the uninstall reinstall, it's really important to also trash the UAD preference files just in case anything got corrupted or set wrong in there. That allows you to start from a clean slate and wipe everything out. So to do an uninstall reinstall, it's pretty similar as far as how you'd find the directions. Just go to help.uaudio.com, search for your Apollo model, and then your OS, because the uninstall reinstall directions are obviously different for Mac and Windows. Let's say Mac, and then uninstall.
Matt, you're so good at searching. You should if you could have a gig at just searching, man, you're good at this.
It's almost like I wrote this knowledge base.
I know.
So yeah, again, very first thing that comes up, Mac Apollo X uninstall reinstall procedure. This will walk you through the whole thing. It's a little bit, at first glance, it seems a little bit more involved than a hardware reset, but it's not. It's really just a matter of going to your applications folder, running the uninstaller, and then going to this location, library preferences, and deleting the preference files. And most of them are in the universal audio folder. So you can go to library preferences, delete the whole universal audio folder, and then delete these couple extra com.uaudio files. And that'll wipe out all the preferences. Once you reinstall the UAD software, it'll replace all those preferences in their default state. So you'll be at a clean slate.
Does it delete like users' console sessions or plugin presets as well, or does it leave those intact?
Yeah, that's a great question. It doesn't touch your console sessions, doesn't touch your presets. Those are all saved in a different location.
Nice.
On Windows, the console sessions and presets are tied a little bit more into the preferences. So if you look up the Windows directions, they're explicit about make sure not to delete these files because these are your user saved presets. But on Mac, they're in a totally different place. You don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, you might you'll lose like your alt monitor trims and some small minor setup details, but nothing user generated.
Yeah, exactly. Any like your Q output routing, custom IO, that kind of stuff gets blown out. But you can always save like IO presets, console sessions, plugin presets, whatever you need beforehand, and then use those to recall all your settings once you reinstall.
Awesome. Nice.
So yeah, that's UAD specific. You can also do pretty much the same thing for Luna, which we don't have an article for right now, I believe.
We have a thing on the forum. If you go to the forum, Matt, we've got a sticky on the forum for uninstalling Luna. You don't have to go to it, but if you wanted to, we have a sticky going that shows how to do both. If you want to do a full uninstall, or if you wanted to do, I think if you scroll down a little, there's going to be. Oh yeah, there we go. So it's
troubleshooting.
No, it's going to be in the Luna recording system. It's a sticky in Luna.
Cool.
And you'll see here.
Yeah,
and I actually changed the title to be uninstall and deleting pref. So you've got two different ways of doing it. One, if you wanted to just completely uninstall, and then otherwise, if you just want to reset preferences, then those are the locations and the files. There's note there that some of the bolded lines are there. Those are serious stuff. I made them bold to make sure people understood that was.
If you definitely don't want anyone to ever hear your sessions again,
right.
That's the way to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well,
yeah,
and this
is great, Drew.
Yeah. And so, a lot of times, uninstalling, deleting preferences. This is something that, when would a user get to the point where they need to go this far? This obviously is not your first troubleshooting step. This is kind of like near the end after you've done a bunch of things. So, like, how would you guys kind of stack rank? If we're gonna kind of progress from, all right, man, I'm having issues, hearing bugs, getting weird stuff happening. where do I start, and then how far do I take that?
Totally. Yeah. So like we said, very first thing, do a cold reboot of all your UAD hardware and the computer. Open up the same session you were working on before, see if you're still having the same problem. If you are, then it's a good idea to isolate the session. So open a brand new session, kind of recreate what you were doing, see if you're still having the same problem. Sessions can get corrupted and things can happen in specific sessions. So good to rule that out. If the same thing happens after the cold reboot in multiple sessions, at that
Defaulting
point,
IO. Yeah, defaulting IO is a good one.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're having IO issues, so you're not getting input, not getting output, things aren't going where you think they should be when you're routing them, resetting the IO is a great thing, which you can do. Settings, IO matrix. Oop,
Oh, sorry, I stopped your screen
mouse
share
would be-
there for a second.
Oh, okay. Let me share again. Yeah, let's go from the beginning. So console app settings, you can also get here from Luna, but settings, IO matrix, basically just by toggling this mode, if it's on default, toggling to custom and back to default, that'll basically reset everything. I'm not going to do it right now since that'll fork my system. But yeah, that's how you reset the IO, and that can help in a lot of times. There's a situation you can get into where the IO can kind of get customized where you didn't do anything specifically, and just going back and reloading the default IO will blow everything out, make sure everything's correct.
Nice.
So yeah, that's a good next step. And if you're still having problems after that, at that point, I would say the uninstall reinstall is a good way to go. And it seems kind of daunting at first, but as long as you take care not to delete your user created files, like your sessions and your presets, it really doesn't take that long. It doesn't have too big of an impact on your workflow. So it's definitely a good thing to try at that point.
Nice. And what about reaching out to support? So what's the best way for people to get in touch with support, and what's helpful from like the support point of view for people to know and provide as they're reaching out? Yeah,
totally. So when you do contact support, 9 times out of 10, they're going to ask you to do this stuff. Everything that I've just gone through. So you can kind of save yourself a lot of time by doing it first before you contact support, and then being very clear when you do contact support about letting them know what you've tried already. That way they can just get right in the meat of the issue with you. They don't have to have you go through all these preliminary troubleshooting steps just to make sure that wasn't the issue. Because like we said earlier, 9 times out of 10, one of these things is going to solve your problem.
Yeah.
So if you do all these things and then contact support, then they know that they can kind of ignore all the other stuff and really get into the core of the issue. And the best way to contact support, just go to help.uaudio.com, same place our KB is. Scroll down where it says still have questions and click this contact us button.
Nice.
That'll allow you to submit a ticket. On the contact us page, there's also a phone number you can call and the hours and all that.
Nice.
But the one other thing I wanted to mention, as part of just like the basic troubleshooting stuff that support's going to have you go through anyway. If you've done everything I just mentioned, hardware reset, cold reboot, uninstall, reinstall of UAD software and Luna, trashing the preferences of UAD and Luna. If you're still having problems after that, especially like connection issues, so like your Apollo is not being recognized or it's going offline sometimes or something like that, replacing your Thunderbolt cable is a really good idea. And especially if you're having like error 38 or any kind of plug-in errors, that can also be pretty typically caused by a bad Thunderbolt cable. So that'd be like the last thing. I wouldn't go out and buy a Thunderbolt cable first thing because they're a little pricey, but if you've done everything else, your Apollo is still not connecting to your computer, it's still dropping offline sometimes, replacing your cable is a good next step.
Nice.
And then contacting support beyond that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful, man. Yeah, I know, it's one of those things you always hope that you never get into situations where you're stuck like that, but it is always helpful to like, just, especially if you're in the heat of a session, right? Or like you're like in the middle of trying to make a song and then, you start having bugs or issues. It's like the last thing you want to deal with is having to think about, troubleshooting or anything like that. So having, just having the simple thing of like, man, just restart, I always start with like restarting the session, restarting Luna, restarting my machine, restarting the Apollos. Like I slowly add up the number of things that get reset. Or you can, if I'm impatient, I'll just start with the, like, as you mentioned, shut down the system, shut down my Apollos, boot it back up completely fresh. And that does solve so many weird gremlin issues.
Well, and of course we have to say, don't update in the middle of a project, right? We also have to, let's put that out there too, and another, make sure you clone, make sure you familiarize yourself with cloning your OS and having backups and stuff like that. So, we gotta do all that stuff too.
Backups are essential.
Absolutely.
Nice. Well, awesome, guys, man. What a fun office hours. This has been really cool, kind of previewing what's coming up this week for Luna. It's good to walk through those troubleshooting steps. So we have a great reference for people to come check out. Thank you, everybody in the comments. It's been super busy today over there in the comment section, but I see lots of questions getting answered over there via text. Thanks again to all of our lunatics who are constantly watching and hanging out with us. We've got a fun week this week, so we've got the show we just did today. We've got Fab is on tomorrow with Tales from the Switch, and we've got Louis Cato's coming back, and we're actually starting to work on that song that we previewed, I think, like 2 or 3 episodes ago. You heard a little preview of the song they're going to be working on. We're actually going to be diving in and doing a remote recording session with Louis and Fab tomorrow at 10 a.m. And then Wednesday, we've got a really special deep dive that Drew is teaching us everything you need to know about ARM. We're
gonna try.
Man,
we're gonna try.
We've been working on this outline for this program for a couple of weeks now, and it's exhaustive. It's gonna be really cool if you're using Luna for recording, whether it's bands in a professional studio setting or just on your own at home using virtual instruments. It doesn't matter. The ARM is there to always give you the lowest latency experience possible. But there's a lot of cool things that you can do with it as well, and there's some things that are going to be helpful to know. So Wednesday morning, 10 a.m., we're going to deep dive. We're going to, it's
2 hours.
I was like,
I think 2 hours.
I was like, it's not going to just be an hour. This is
gonna be long.
It's going to be a big boy. So yeah, tune in for that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
For the new folks, we're not talking about Apple's ARM processors they just announced. We're talking accelerated real-time.
Oh yeah,
monitoring.
good point. Good point.
Good point of clarification. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Or this ARM, yeah.
Right. So Wednesday, 10 a.m. We'll be here. Drew's got an incredible program lined up for us. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. And again, if you guys have got music or photos you want us to feature in the countdown, tag the photos with #UAudio on Instagram and hit us up with your music live at uaudio.com. Send us an email with an MP3 or a downloadable link. We'll take a listen to it, and you never know, your music might get selected to be part of an upcoming countdown. So with that, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Connor, Matt, Drew, thank you so much for helping walk us through what's coming up here in 106. Super excited for people to get a chance to get in there and start reversing things. And yeah, everybody have a fantastic...
So they can all do their clean mixes now. You can all do your clean mixes, right?
Exactly. No more cursing.
Yep.
Awesome, guys. Well, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, everybody.